say hello to YouTube because we're about to go through the preview for the June 25th balance update. Got quite a lot to get through here today. Slightly smaller patch, I think. Like maybe there's some preparation for the next expansion. That's where I think a lot of the skills team is kind of working right now. So a couple of numbers tweak-oriented changes. A lot of focus on improving defensive utilities in PvE, and definitely more PvE-oriented patch, I want to say. A couple of tweaks here and there, actually, especially towards Commander focus and World Verse as well, which kind of a little fun thing to kind of slip in here as well. Some new amulets in PvP as well, but yeah, mostly a PvE-oriented patch, kind of looking at tuning up some builds and making sure that engineers are always using grenades. I'm sure there's lots of very excited players about that who are just gonna love to see it. So without any further ado, let's get into it. Of course, there was a balanced stream that came along with this, and if you'd like to kind of have a look at some of the insights of like why these changes were made and kind of the thought process, I highly recommend watching. It's always incredibly entertaining. It was quite tragically without CMC this time, but Roy and Trig, as usual, did a phenomenal job. Very entertaining. I'd highly recommend taking a look at it. It'll be linked in the video description. But anyway, let's get down to business here. So, first of all, we're actually getting some new amulets in PvP, and this is kind of a pretty big change, actually, in my opinion, because it's been usually removing amulets from PvP has been the modus operandi. Like, some problematic amulets have been systematically removed over the years in guilds through PvP. This is going to be the first time in a very long time that we're actually adding new ones. It's going to be the Heretic Amulet, which is power, precision, ferocity, and healing power, and the Tyrant Amulet, which is going to be power, condition damage, precision, and toughness. And, of course, we'll have to really get in there and play around with some of these and see how these kind of work out. And you can see that the first one is going to be maybe kind of a support build with a bit more damage attached to it. I'm kind of thinking Spellbreaker potentially because, of course, Warrior already has heavy armor, good defenses with full counter, and, of course, just has the high vitality as well. So the Avatar Amulet Vitality might not be potentially as relevant on this build. Could see some play there. Although, again, is the damage going to outweigh just being a little bit tankier? It's kind of hard to say. I think this is going to need some testing. Tyrant Amulet, I think, is a little bit more complex. I think there aren't that many builds that can kind of get away with, one, being a hybrid, which is already relatively uncommon. A lot of the time, you kind of go for one damage type more than the other, and two, not having a defensive stat attached to it as well. I think there have been some occasions where, I mean, I think Mesmer would be the build that could maybe go for a little bit hybrid. It can definitely get value out of power and condition damage, but I think it's a little bit tricky to find a place for this one in particular, because again, like, when Mesmer has kind of really leaned into its hybridness, it's been stuff like Wizard Amulet and Carrion Amulet, and then having some baked-in precision from traits to make the power on Carrion Amulet really pop off, like when you get a big Mind Rack combo and so on. I don't know, maybe I'm missing something here, but I mean, we'll certainly see. Overall, though, I could definitely speak to talking about, like, do I like this? Absolutely, yeah. I think that most builds right now kind of run the same amulets, and I think that's not really desirable for PvP. There's a lot of Avatar, a lot of Berserker amulets going around the place, right? Like, a lot of Carrion Amulet being used. There isn't a super high amount of variety in terms of, like, what you might go for in terms of builds. And obviously, that can be a little bit limiting to build variety and so on. They have to be a little bit careful with adding stuff, and you'll notice these are fairly aggressive stat types. That's not a surprise whatsoever. The problematic types have typically been ones that kind of enable bunkers and enable that kind of really, really tanky playstyle, stuff like Knight Amulet, for example, or the other one. What was the other one called? I can't, I've erased it from my mind, but there was also a pretty tanky amulet, a 4-stat amulet also got removed as well. So overall, I think pretty interesting stuff. And some new runes too, Rune of the Ogre and Rune of Tormenting. Which, of course, is going to be kind of a power damage-oriented rune. And then you have the Torment-oriented rune as well, with some Torment duration there as well. And that, you know, that's... Rune of Tormenting is kind of something that you might think Mesmer maybe here as well, like Torment duration, like with big Torment bursts. Of course, you have Main the Disillusionment with Axe as well on Mirage, for example. Could potentially see some play there as well. In that regard, so we'll have to see how those ones play out. But in general, I think this is good. I think adding runes and relics is actually a pretty good way to balance the game, by the way. Like, I think skills are important to balance, but also adding stat types and runes and relics are also a great way to influence the balance of the game, but perhaps more subtle ways rather than having to rework or change skills. And a couple of little general tweaks here as well. Taunt. Increase the Defiance damage per second from 75 to 100. This is just a change in PvE to basically make Taunt better for CC, and I think this is actually aimed at Firebrand. More on that later when we get there, in particular to help just in general to be a bit more CC for Guardian, and I guess also, on Rev too, if you're running Jalis for the taunt ability there. So slight buffs across the board. Nothing major though, nothing significant. And then Frost Aura. Chill duration on Frost Aura goes down from 2 seconds to 1 second in World versus World only. Yeah, this is not a surprise. We've seen a lot of changes trying to kind of tone down some of the condition application, just the amount of application, and also the strength of that application in general when it comes to these kind of snaring abilities and these slowing abilities. And Chill can be incredibly debilitating. If you get caught out of position, then it's not going to be fun. There's a lot of cleanse right now overall, so this is probably not going to be a change that's going to be super impactful, but I think it just follows on with the general philosophy of what ArenaNet is trying to do here, like with their direction World versus World, to just kind of reduce application down a little bit in general across the board. So, first up, and it's going to be Elementalist this time around. Wow, Elementalist, like, brace yourselves to get nerfed. ELE in a pretty decent spot right now. A lot of good builds that exist, at least in PvE anyway. Like, ELE a little bit falling behind in the other game modes, I want to say, currently. But let's see if anything is going to go up, you know, if that's going to get buffed. You know, are we going to see the return of some of these builds? I don't know. Let's find out right now. So let's have a look at what's going on here. We've also made some usability improvements to Dagger and Staff by reducing the casting time of breath attacks and adding an initial Defiance damage dealing strike to the crowd control skills that require movement. That's another theme you're going to see here, by the way. A lot of skills, stuff like Guardian Staff line, yeah, when you just put a line down, or the Necromancer Fear Ring, not super useful for breaking Defiance bars, even though you might think they are, right? They apply fear, they apply knockback, kind of a thing that prevents enemies from crossing. You might think they're good for CC, but in general, bosses typically don't move over them super well, and that's going to be a theme here. Basically, all of those abilities have been updated to also initially do some CC in PvE only. That could actually potentially be quite relevant, actually. Like, packing on more CC onto certain builds is always going to be nice, right? Especially if you have pretty flexible utility skills as well. This update also includes improvements for support Tempest builds with more reliable Might and Fury sources in PvE, and additional defensive tools in the Earth specialization for competitive play. Overload Air also gets a significant power increase in PvE, as we look to improve power-based damage builds for Tempest. So across the board, Scepter damage is going up in PvE in terms of the power coefficient. I think it's definitely one of the weapons that has kind of fallen behind a little bit. Scepter used to be very good on Condi builds, but again, like, when Soto came out, a lot of weapons kind of got replaced by the elite spec weapons, sword, and now of course eventually pistol as well, an incredibly powerful weapon, especially for condition damage builds, that has left stuff like Scepter a little bit aimless here, and they're just trying to kind of improve that, make the damage output less bad, and this is a bit of a running theme here, and I think this is why this balance patch might feel a little bit weird, maybe not quite as exciting as other patches. A lot of these changes, they're not necessarily going to revolutionize the meta. A lot of these changes, in my mind, are aimed at making weaker choices less bad. And this is something that ArenaNet do want to do. They want to make it so, oh, you know, whatever weapon you pick, it kind of works out okay. And I definitely get that. I think it would be nice to see more aggressive changes sometimes to shake things up. But again, I think we're in a slightly weird spot, pre-expansion spot, to be honest, where I think a lot of the skills development is going into the combat update for the next expansion. So I think that's kind of why this is a slightly smaller patch. But yeah, numbers up across the board on Scepter for this. Just going to be a little bit nicer. There is actually a decent core build on ELE, right? Like, core Condi ELE with Scepter is actually pretty good. To be honest, so there you go. A little bit more damage on that. It's only power damage, but, you know, as opposed to Condi, but it is what it is. And then we have some slight quality of life improvements here, and just, I guess, just straight up buffs as well, right? You breathe your breath faster, so that's going to be cross game mode, and a couple of numbers tweaks in PvP and World vs. World, significant in PvP, and that is actually a focus here, by the way, with Tempest, is actually to improve it in PvP and World vs. World specifically. It is also being improved in PvE at the same time, but I think the main focus is actually competitive. Like, support Tempest is definitely a mainstay of competitive PvP over the years, but has certainly fallen behind, especially with the introduction of Chronomancer, with Chronomancer heal being really, really strong, even getting nerfed and still being really, really strong. So I think that's kind of the goal, is to nudge this build up and make it more competitive. And I think these changes are actually pretty damn solid in that regard, and we'll get into those right now. So the really fun stuff is Frozen Burst now creates an ice field before performing its blast finisher. This is going to give you a guaranteed ice finisher on Dagger 3 now. So you're able to get that AoE Frost Aura, which is, of course, going to lead into boon application. If you're traded into that. And, of course, just the damage reduction effect as well. 10% damage reduction and, of course, inflicting chill on your enemies when they strike you. Really cool, actually. I think this is going to be a really fun skill to use. When I'm playing Tempest as a healer, I really like being able to apply AoE auras, right? You can have aura share, of course, and kind of do that a little bit, but here's another source of that now, which I think is really cool. Of course, this is going to be good synergy with Caracosa Relic in addition to this. It's a real shame we can't do Alacrity and Aura Heal, and that's going to be another unfortunate slight theme of this patch. Is like there's some really fun changes here, but maybe a kind of glaring issue isn't necessarily being addressed, unfortunately. We'll see that a little bit later on with Firebrand. There's some foreshadowing for you. And Convergence, this is Air Dagger 2, is now a Blast Finisher. And bear in mind, ELE loves Blast Finishers. You have access to water fields. You're able to generate even more healing with that. And of course, if you have the Caracosa Relic, that's going to be even more healing when you're actually getting through those blast finishes and utilizing your water fields, utilizing your ice fields, whatever you're doing, fire fields too for might and so on. It's all going to be good. A couple of cooldown reductions and damage increases in PvP and World vs. World. Again, they just want to make the numbers a little bit better in this regard with this stuff. And then the other big changes that are kind of going to be aimed at kind of improving this in the competitive sense is going to be the big stuff here. Earthen Blast. You get Barrier when attuned to Earth, so Tempest is inherently a little bit tankier now. Get yourself some Barrier while you're attuned to Earth, and a rework to Diamond Skin. So if you want to deal with conditions, like there's kind of two options now. If you go Stoneheart, that's going to give you immunity to critical strikes when you attune and leave Earth attunement, so a bit of tankiness there. Diamond Skin is going to be the condition option, and this is going to be one also aimed at World versus World a lot, I think. Remove a Condi from yourself when you combo with a Leap Finisher, and remove a condition from yourself and nearby allies when you do a Blast Finisher. We've already seen them setting up Blast Finishers with Frozen Burst and Convergence. That's going to go ahead and carry over into condition removal, which is obviously very highly prized in the support context in World vs. World, but also in PvP as well. Like right now, in PvP, obviously things are still pretty power-oriented. A lot of the time, actually, there's a lot of power damage going out currently. But of course, this does mean that the Earth trait line, which has historically had some weakness when it comes to AoE cleansing, may actually have that weakness somewhat alleviated by Diamond Skin. Tempest used to be, not exactly awkward, but you had to either pick Fire for Condi Cleanse or Earth for resistance against power damage. That was kind of the difference, the design choice that you had to make there, or like the build choice you had to make there. Now, I would actually argue that's kind of good design. The only problem is, and this is actually, look, okay, oh my god. Oh no. I'm going to have to say something that the ELE mains, they're going to like it, and I don't like doing this. Elementalist has actually had a bit of a problem historically, in all gamers actually, but I think especially in PvE actually, is that Elementalist, you have to pick and choose and make trade-offs with your build, but other classes don't. Like, Elementalist has been historically well-designed, I think, in this aspect. Actually, the rest of the game has kind of run away with it and become pretty power creepy, and you just kind of have everything in one go. So, do I think this is kind of going to lead to a somewhat inferior design? I kind of do, actually, but ultimately, it probably is better given the state of where the game is kind of at with that design. Like, ELE was pretty much the only class that had to make trade-offs this way, like, you know, picking between defense against Condis, defense against power damage in PvP, in that PvP support context. So it's probably going to make a little bit more sense that you kind of can have both now utilizing the Earth trait line. You're going to be able to have that protection on your auras, you have a little bit more barrier on Earth and Blast, and then you can also, you know, you can have the Diamond Skin to deal with the Condis, right? You will have to sacrifice a Stoneheart for that, so there'll still be a little bit of a trade-off there, but it will be within the same trait line rather than having like an entirely different trait line there as well. In that regard. But yeah, there you have it. I think some good changes there, actually. You know, I think that support diversity is a weakness of Guild Wars 2's PvP balance, and you know, I really am looking forward to the day where Firebrand is good, Spellbreak is good, Tempest is good, and Mesmer is good. I think that will be really fun. Maybe we'll see a little bit of experimentation over the next couple of months in the automated and maybe even the weekly tournaments. Pretty cool stuff. And then I think this one's kind of a PvE one here as well. Over here with Soothing Power. Soothing Power now gives 300 Vitality to the ELE. This is a really powerful sustain trait in the water trait line. You very commonly take this as a heal Tempest in PvE. And now it just makes you a bit tankier as well, just to kind of compensate for maybe having some slightly lower Vitality, just a straight buff pretty much to this trait. Soothing Ice. Now, whenever you use your heal skill, you get Frost Aura. This is just a complete passive proc when you got crit. So this is just going to be way better, feel way better to use, I think. And also just give you a little bit of tankiness, actually. Because, again, you use your heal skill, you get that damage reduction. That's going to be a good time to potentially get that damage reduction when you're using your heal. Maybe you're in a big team fight, sustaining everyone. Or maybe you're healing up after taking a lot of damage. And then you can chill your enemies and also get some damage reduction. So I think this trait is just vastly superior now in terms of its design. It does actually have a bit of competition with Stop, Drop, and Roll, which when you dodge roll, you remove Burning and Chill. So, there's going to be some picking and choosing there, but I think definitely a solid option. And a much better designed option there as well. Flow Like Water. This is, they're just making this trait better. I'm not sure if you're going to be taking this on a lot of builds, because it's kind of like a DPS trait. But in the water trait line, which, there are a couple of builds that would be kind of bruisery oriented, almost kind of like the old Water Weaver, which, I shudder to think about that maybe you'd want something like this for a bit more damage, but I'm not sure if you would really take this right now on any of the current builds that exist with this stuff as well. And then going on to the actual Tempest trait line, basically the core here is trying to give Tempest Fury access without having to commit to the Air trait line. So Overload Air gives AoE Fury now to allies. Heatsink gives you Fury before you share it out. Feel the Burn now gives Fury to allies in PvE only and more Might. Gathered Focus is more concentration, no matter what, regardless of how much HP you have, which is just, it's going to be better, basically. And Hardy Conduit, now you give AoE protection to allies when you overload as well. So, just better baseline boon access. This gives you a lot more flexibility with weapon choices, by the way. I think Staff LEs in particular are really going to like this, because now you're able to have better Might application and Fury application without Warhorn. I think you were very reliant on Warhorn for boon application a lot of the time on Tempest as a healer. And of course, you then have that awkwardness with the Fury as well. Kind of annoying to get Fury. Wasn't a huge deal because there's a lot of other sources of Fury, like your other support can give it over, but this is really nice to be able to actually have... It's really nice to actually have both of this at the same time, so now you can do both. You can have Staff, you can have Warhorn. There's a whole bunch of ways you can kind of apply the core boons to all the stuff. So I think this is kind of nice for PvE. Gives you a bit more weapon flexibility and just allows you to have that Fury access. Again, I don't want to say here, and also, yeah, Hardy Conduit AoE Prot is really nice in PvP too, of course. And of course, the Gathered Focus, like higher boon duration. Like this stuff is like super nice for PvP too. For giving your allies just, again, a little bit more extra protection, better protection uptime there as well. So pretty good if you ask me. Yeah, like the elephant in the room here is I think Heal Tempest in PvE still has some pretty fundamental design issues that it's struggling with. It has pretty bad boon application. Its overloads are low radius with their boons, which is kind of awkward, especially when you have stuff like Herald with 600 radius. Having an overload with 240 radius doesn't feel super good, especially because you have to do a 4-second channel, 2 seconds with quickness, right? But you have to do a long channel to actually cast that ability. And then, of course, you can't take the Aura Heal and Alacrity trait, which would make all this Blast Finish stuff super exciting. You can get your Frost Aura and then AoE heal everyone and AoE boon everyone. All that stuff will be super exciting. But again, it's just missing a couple of kind of key components, in my opinion, to make that build really exciting. The changes are going to be really cool in PvP and World Verse as well, but the PvE stuff, in my opinion, still needs a couple more refinements in order to kind of make that happen. And yeah, there's a couple of other changes that I kind of glossed over a little bit in terms of some of these cooldown reductions, because they are kind of generic changes. Their goal with these is to... If you're in open world, a really good thing you can do is to take your full DPS build, basically, and slap a stun break on it. And they're trying to make doing that feel better, which I think is actually great. I think it's really good that a player is going to feel clever and rewarded for going, oh, I'm going to take a defensive skill instead of going full damage. And historically, that can feel pretty bad because a lot of the cooldowns are really long. Like the defensive utilities haven't been power crept nearly as hard as the offensive utilities and offensive stuff in the game. So this is a general point that we'll be seeing we're going to be seeing this popping up across the board. Elsewhere in other classes too. Basically every profession, in fact, is having changes like this. I think this is actually pretty cool. I like this. That now you might go, oh, I'm going to take one of these defensive skills, and it's going to really help me survive and, you know, in my adventuring out in the world. Is it going to affect instance content that much, or like that type of metagame, like group content? Honestly, not really. These changes are kind of not super relevant, but they're kind of bringing these skills up to a more acceptable power level, which I think is a solid goal to overall have in that regard. So yeah, pretty good. In my opinion. And yeah, the alacrity is 360, but the boons on the overloads is 240 a lot of the time. Yeah, the alacrity is 360, but it's still scuffed. And yeah, as we saw here, like static field and unsteady ground, now you get instant CC when you drop these on an enemy. So staff getting significant CC improvements. And similar cooldown reductions here with Armor of Earth. I think this one in particular is actually pretty cool. Like Armor of Earth with a 25-second cooldown, actually pretty strong, nifty utility skill in my opinion for just to have on your bar as a stun break and like high stability and some barrier application there in the open world there as well. Same with Arcane Shield, honestly. This one's also pretty good. Pretty good, I would say. I think. So yeah, I would say nothing to, you know, good news, Elementalist. You dodged the nerf hammer this time around, actually. I guess except for poor old Earth and Synergy, okay? Because now you do no damage on this ability in World vs. World and PvP. You know, this one feels... This almost feels a little bit brutal, to be honest, because, you know, this is an ability that you see pop up on Fresh Air Weaver. Is Fresh Air Weaver a particularly good build? Honestly, not really. You know, it's something that you can play in Ranked, for sure. But, you know, it's definitely not something you're going to see in, like, in the monthly AT finals, I think. It's kind of a build that only true enthusiasts like to play in that regard. But anyway, that's it for ELE. Enjoy. Let's move on to Engineer. Here we go. Alchemy gets a significant upgrade with the reintroduction of Elixir condition removal on the Minor Grandmaster trait. This won't affect other allies as it did in its previous iteration, but it will give engineers some much needed defense against conditions through Elixir skill triggers on the other minor traits and any other elixirs they bring. Much needed, man. Dude, this is after they juiced up the tools trait line with like with a bunch of Comedy Cleanse as well. We've also added a more reliable source of fury, replacing the rarely used, utilized emergency elixir trait to give damage-focused builds more consistent pressure. On the PvE side of things, we've adjusted damage numbers on Grenade Kit, Toolkit, and some of the Holosmith's Exceed skills to bring them more in line with each other. Elixir X also gets a fun addition. Lich is being added to the pool of transformations while on land. We wanted to make the skill a more reliable offensive threat, and felt that adding another offensive focused transformation was more interesting direction than simply adjusting the individual chances of Rampage and Tornado. So, well, we'll get to that when we get to that. But anyway, let's get down to business here with this one. So, a couple of utility skill adjustments. Well, actually, let's go do the grenade stuff first. Let's get in here. So, right, here's the deal. Launch Wall, Laserdisc, Particle Accelerator, Blade Burst, nerfed. The damage bonus is going from 50% to 35% in PvE. And grenades. Freeze Grenade and Poison Grenade. Damage coefficients going up to 0.75, and the cooldown on Poison Grenade is equalized. You're basically, instead of having kind of this cycle where you do one with Poison Grenade, one with Freeze Grenade, you're going to basically do them both at the same time every time. So it kind of slightly alters the rotation a little bit, basically equalizes the cooldown there. And you get significantly more damage. Bear in mind, you get 3 grenades, so you get triple that power coefficient. So it's a significant buff here. And their goal here is to basically put some power back into Grenade Kit, because it doesn't trigger the Relic of Fireworks that was kind of intended. So, you know, they wanted to put some power back into the grenades and take it away from Holosmith. So Scrapper, happy days. We're just getting a flat buff over in Scrapper land. Enjoy that. Holo, it basically says about the same in terms of the actual overall damage here, by the way. It's just that, you know, they just want you to use grenades. I don't know. That's... I'm not sure how I really feel about that, to be honest. I'm not sure if I even have an opinion. You know, it's the devs want you to use grenades on your DPS Holosmith. I think some people are gonna like that. Personally, I kind of like it. I like Grenade Kit, so I don't mind it. But I also know that a lot of people hate kits with a fiery passion, I guess. So I guess that's gonna be an unpopular change there, I suppose. In general, I think grenades are good. Having some ranged damage is always gonna be nice, and there's some nifty utility in there as well with the blind in particular. I think can be quite useful to have with that one. And Grenade Barrage is just a fun ability to use, just overall. So, again, I'm not complaining about it too much in that regard. And then some changes over here. So healing turret getting buffed. This is probably because a lot of the other healing skills kind of got power crept for NG. So we're going to kind of bring that back into the meta. I think I have very fond memories of healing turret. Probably my favorite NG heal skill to use. There's something just kind of quite satisfying about it. You drop it down, you get the heal, then you can blast the heal by detonating it. I think that's just like a really fun interaction. So I'm definitely a healing turret enjoyer. There's some strong options, though, actually. Like, in particular, the Holosmith heal is actually really good, especially with the tool belt skill, allowing you to remove a lot of condies from yourself. You have to burn yourself, but it's still pretty good in that regard. But yeah, there you go. Personal battering ram. Launch distance goes from 450 to 0. Ammunition charge goes down from 30 to 20 seconds. It's definitely not an ability that sees play in PvP, to be honest. Will it see play now? I'm not totally convinced on that, to be honest. And yeah, I guess they are a little bit worried about decap NG, and that's why it doesn't knock you back anymore. It basically just knocks you up in the air, and you know, you just kind of bounce, you flop around like a dead fish or something, or semi-dead fish, I guess, in PvP only. So it's going to work quite differently, actually, in PvE and World versus World compared to PvP, which is interesting. But yeah, in PvP, get your personal battering ram and CC someone. Of course, it is a launch, so it's a long duration CC that you could use to set up a combo, and it is also ammunition too, so pretty powerful CC, but engineer utility skills are relatively competitive, to be honest. It has to compete with stuff like Toolkit, which is pretty nifty in PvP right now, for that slot, which, of course, you know, is a kit, so it has not only CC options, but also some defensive stuff as well. Elixir S, cooldown goes from 60 to 30 in PvE only. Yeah, this was definitely one of those skills that got hurt a little bit by removing the Elixir cooldown trait from the game, basically. It just, you know, didn't reduce it anymore, so they had to, you know, now it's way shorter. Funnily enough, this actually does have one kind of minor effect in instance PvE, is that you'll be able to actually use Elixir S on Suwon Phase 2 for both of the shockwaves, for placing the red circle in that very common strategy. So that actually makes HTCM slightly easier if you're learning this role on Heal Mechanist. There you go. Kind of a little interesting meme there, I suppose. I mean, it's something. And Elixir U, reduce the cooldown from 32 to 20 seconds in PvE only. Reduce the cooldown from 32 to 25 in PvP and World versus World. Reduce the durations of the boons. In general, let me tell you something. This makes abilities slightly better in general when you do this. When you proportionally reduce cooldown and durations, that's usually better. So this skill, it's better now. This actually did used to get used in PvP, actually, on like really old Holosmith builds, actually. Will it return? Honestly, who knows? You know, it's hard to look at the numbers and go like, ah, yes, this is busted now. Especially when you're looking at it in a complete vacuum, right, without all of the builds. But anyway, let's continue. Utility goggles, yeah, cooldown's down. Detection pulse inflicts vulnerability on enemies. Okay, yeah, slight improvement there. Cooldown on slick shoes, yeah, it's down. Look, there's a lot of changes like this. They made the cooldowns lower on these abilities so you can use them a little bit more. You know, it is what it is. Not super consequential, I think. Pry bar and throw wrench damage is going up in PvE only. I'm not sure. Someone's gonna have to crunch the numbers on this. Like, is this gonna be good in PvE? I think this is one of those changes that, again, is more making a maybe not the best choice less bad, rather than trying to create something brand new meta, I suppose. But I think changes like that are in general good. Here's the fun one. Magna in Toolkit, of course. This skill now properly plays its visual effect during the full channel. The skill cannot be retargeted, and this skill now applies bonus defiance damage to targets with defiance bars. So the actual important thing here, this is a massive nerf to com focus, commander focus, and world versus world. This is why they did this. So the retarget means you can't precast this and go into range. It means that you can't swap to a target right as the ability is about to go off, making it harder to avoid. And the telegraph is always going to play, so it's going to be much easier to avoid or apply stability. This is actually a really big nerf to commander pulling in general in World vs. World, which is exactly what it's supposed to do. Like, the telegraph was just straight up bugged. The telegraph is really weird on this. It only plays at the start and then doesn't actually play at the end, which is very unusual to us, making this ability just kind of hard to avoid even in normal circumstances. You know, not even regarding like the actual kind of nefarious use of this. In general, I do think that com focus is probably not really good for the game overall. It's definitely funny, for sure. I think It doesn't make the game mode more fun, though. It typically is fun for the person pulling, and it kind of ruins the fight for everyone else involved. So, yeah, I think it's pretty lame. I don't hate it, you know. Like, I think all's fair. I'm not going to say you shouldn't do this. If the game lets you do it at the end of the day, I think it's fair game. But honestly, tactics like this being nerfed or removed, it's not something I'm going to really lose sleep over, I guess. You know, like, let's, that's how it is. Yeah, that's, it is what it is with Magnet. So, not bad if you ask me. And then a couple of changes with compounding chemicals and emergency elixir in alchemy. Is boiling point. Gain fury when you gain might at or above the threshold. So basically you apply might to yourself with elixirs or HDH, and then you're going to get fury. You're going to have a good fury source here in the alchemy trait line, which is actually pretty good, right? Like having fury, especially in PvP, is really, really good to have. And this trait wasn't... It was kind of a scuffed one anyway, right? Because it was like... They tried to rework it from being passive on emergency elixir, but it was just weird, right? And now compounding chemicals just says whenever you use an elixir skill, you're going to remove a condition from the user. So a lot of extra condition cleanse here actually as well. Bear in mind this would also apply to mortar kit elixirs and also elixir gun elixirs too, when it comes to removing condition from yourself in addition to your utility skills. So a lot going on there. But yeah, this does have to compete, of course, with tools, and tools also got a lot of extra condi cleanse. You got to bear that in mind. In some of the last patches, that was kind of the goal. You know, it's funny, actually. Their goal was to move engineers away from being locked into alchemy, and now they're like, well, maybe we want you to go back to alchemy, or at least try out alchemy once again, though, which is actually kind of interesting with this one. But yeah, the NG builds right now, they are pretty locked in there. Oh, with the explosive and tools setup. For PvP, so let's see if this is able to compete. Elixir X. This is an ability that I don't think is really seeing a lot of use right now. I think this is more of a fun change. This, you know, weirdly enough, I feel like this Elixir X is almost a nerf to prevent this ability from potentially being problematic. Because when you have an ability that has very high variance on it, it's not even a 50-50 now. It's like a 33% chance to get a specific transform. It's more of like a for fun ability now, I feel like, more than an actual ability. Because when it's 50-50, it's like, okay, you know, you can kind of get the one you want pretty frequently and kind of wreak havoc on your opponent and get some like really big value there. When it's a 1 in 3 to get the one that you're really looking for at that situation, I feel like there's too much variance here for this to actually see a lot of play, I think. To be honest, but yeah. It is what it is. And then for supply crate, you know, nice buff in PvE. In general, like, they're trying to... This is a theme you're going to see here. A lot of elite skill cooldowns just going down. And the reason for that is because they have high cooldowns. They want you to press them more. And a lot of more modern elite skill design is oriented around shorter cooldowns so you can use your feel-good ultimate skill. And supply crate is good. You know, you can certainly see some play on a couple of options. You can play this on Scrapper. You can play this on Mechanist, Heal Mechanist, for example, if you don't need Mortar Kit. So there's actually plenty of places where you can actually get some decent value out of this from the perspective of a DPS or a healer. So there you have it. You know, some changes for NG. Again, not too much, nothing too super crazy. It's not going to blow your mind, that's for sure. You know, unless you really hate grenades, then I guess it might. But yeah, that's it for Engineer. Guardian. Some miscellaneous changes for Guardian, like Focus Mastery. You get Resolution now. Monk's Focus. You give AoE Resolution when you use a meditation skill. And that's kind of nice for Core Guard in PvP, actually, funny enough, like Monk's Focus. Like kind of like the Judgment build, right? With this core DPS Guardian. So, I mean, you can get some value out of that one. A bunch of utility skills having a much lower cooldown. Save yourselves, Contemplation, Judge's Intervention, and PvE. Yeah, sure, whatever. Line of Warding and Ring of Warding and Hunter's Ward. More CC. You get guaranteed CC now when you land these abilities. Super nice for PvE, especially for Heal Firebrand there with your Line of Warding and your DPS Dragon Hunter as well. Just, you know, nice little buffs. More CC is always fun, isn't it? And then Firebrand basically gets some big output improvements. More might on Ash of the Just, which is really nice. You know, might generation is obviously a really big, important thing. Definitely a little bit lower on Guardian compared to other builds, honestly, in terms of might generation or other supports. Like, you want to be able to do 25 stacks on your own. This definitely really helps out with that. More stacks and more duration in PvE. Love to see it. Chapter 4, Shining River. That's the pool you put down that heals. Page cost goes down. Healing coefficient goes up. Daring Challenge. That's the Taunt, AoE Taunt on Tome 3. Taunt duration goes up to 2 seconds in PvE. That's actually a lot more CC, because bear in mind, Taunt is being buffed in terms of the Defiance damage it does. So, okay, more CC. Again, comboed with our Staff line also doing more CC on Guardian. Nice. Valiant Bulwark. This is the Firebrand Reflect, right? I believe. On Tome 3. Page cost goes down to 1 in PvE only, and Stalwart's End, that's the resistance in Tome 3, also going down to 1. You are never going to run out of pages now, because even these kind of more specialized high-power abilities now have a page cost of 1 in PvE. And Lawmaster is you get a page every 5 seconds. So between the Mantra, the Mantra trait, giving you 2 pages back whenever you fully discharge a Mantra, and Lawmaster being better, which you don't even necessarily need, even, to be honest, and, of course, the page cost going down, you basically have infinite pages. So, happy days for Firebrand. Oh, wait, hang on. Your application for boons still sucks because mantras are a very small cone and they're really unwieldy. Ooh, yeah, that's a bit awkward, isn't it? Like, yeah, these changes are nice, but they don't really address the problem that Firebrand has. Like, Firebrand as a healer, and honestly as an offensive support, they are 100% underperforming right now in the meta, but it's not really because of page numbers, right? Like, you know, don't get me wrong, this is nice, and these changes are almost like kind of insane, actually, with like how powerful the utility is going to be on this class again. That's not really the issue. The issue is the boon application being as mediocre as it is, particularly on the quickness. The ability to apply quickness with that cone is super awkward, to be honest. Same with the protection on the heal mantra as well. It's not ideal. That is what needs to be tackled, not this. So will this actually help Firebrand in the meta much? To be honest, not really. I don't think it will. Because it ultimately doesn't address the issue with these Firebrand builds in PvE. And just flat out nothing really happening for PvP or World versus World for Guardian here. It's just, again, very PvE-oriented, I want to say. That's sort of, I guess, a very minor improvement for Monk's focus, I guess, in PvP on the core DPS, but yeah, nothing much to talk about there. Yeah, let's move on to Mesmer, I guess. Here we go. We've reduced the cooldown of on a number of Mesmer defensive utility skills in PvE and made some slight improvements to underperforming builds, namely power-based Virtuoso in PvE and condition damage-based Mirage in competitive PvP modes. You know, I watched Boyce play Mirage, and it was a ranked game, I believe, and the man was feeding the entire game. And if Boyce is feeding on a build, it's complete dog shit and unplayable. So, yeah, that definitely adds up. It certainly adds up, actually, that Mirage could use some help in PvP. So, here we go. Imaginary axes. Damage goes up from 4 to 8 seconds in PvP and World versus World. That is, of course, the ambush attack for Axe. And Lingering Thoughts, Axe 2. Reduce the ammunition charge recharge time from 10 to 8 seconds in PvP and World versus World. Is this going to help enough? I'm not going to lie, I don't see it. I think what happens is people target you and you fall over and die, to be honest. There's a lot of damage. I feel like it's super hard to survive on Mirage right now. More damage is nice, and of course, you could kind of push Mirage towards being that assassin-type class, very glass canny that goes in there. Maybe even the amulet we saw at the top, right? The Tyrant amulet could help out with that, like really lean to like a massive power and condition damage burst to overload your opponents, potentially, but I don't know, we'll see. One thing that could potentially help Mesmer build survive is actually Ether Feast getting a significant buff, which now says you get a Condi removed when you use the heal skill, and 1 extra for each clone. That will be a total of 4 conditions removed, actually. And Condi Cleanse is definitely something that Mirage, in particular, struggles with. The only real source of it that you really have is the Grand Master trait. When you get Mirage Cloak, you remove 2 Condis. So this is actually really nice, I think, for you know, Mirage in particular, but I'm sure some other Mesmer builds that aren't necessarily running Inspiration can kind of get some value out of this, I think, with Ether Feast. So that is some pretty nice potential there as well for this one. Huh. I actually didn't know this was a thing. Phantasmal Berserker. Fix an issue that prevented the initial strike of the skill from counting as a blade for the purposes of activating traits. That is actually really interesting. I did not know that was even a thing. But yeah, there you go. That is now officially a blade. Again, we see the usual assortment of cooldown reductions on all of these utility skills. The Veil one is super cool, actually. I really hope people start using this in open world. Putting down like a 30-second stealth field doesn't really do anything, to be honest, except for maybe slightly trolling any thieves that might be nearby. But I like that. That's really fun. 30-second Veil in PvE. That's really cool. And Signet of Midnight is also having its cooldown reduced. Not super impactful. I mean, it's a really short cooldown stun break now, actually, for any kind of condition build. So this is super nice if you're on some kind of kind of condition-oriented build, like you're in the open world, you're getting stunned a little bit, really good. And any kind of Condi build, like there's going to be kind of that condition-style build for open world that's, you know, running around like in Celestia gear or something like that. That's going to be really good because you're going to want to take this anyway for more damage across the board. Mass Invis cooldown goes down. You know, nice. It's a fun skill to use. We love to see that. Nothing wrong with that. I got no complaints there, to be honest. And then we have the fun one. Here is another one. Here we go. Take a look at this, guys. Signet of Humility. 1, the skill now requires a target. 2, it can't be retargeted. 3, the skill now plays an effect above its target's head. Reduce the cooldown from 6 to 2 seconds in world versus world only. Again, just like the magnet change, entirely oriented at preventing commander focus. So now you can't mower someone out of stealth because they'll see the telegraph over their head to know it's being cast rather than the signet over your head. So that's for PvP too, right? You can't stealth mower. Well, you can stealth mower, but, you know, there's counterplay to it, basically, as opposed to there being essentially no counterplay to this. 1, you can't retarget it, very similar to Magnet. This means that you can't precast it nearly as effectively and then swap onto the correct target, and you actually need a target to even begin casting it to begin with, so you're going to have to select the exact right person as opposed to clicking on the correct one while also targeting. And 2-second duration in world versus world means that even if the mower lands, it means that you're going to be able to essentially just use the defensive abilities in mower, particularly the 5th skill, the evade, and that should pretty much prevent you from just dying with absolutely zero counterplay, which can 100% happen. Yeah, I mean, I think this is probably a pretty sensible change. Again, I think that the commander-focused gameplay leads to some pretty anti-fun gameplay patterns that I don't think are particularly good for the game mode, especially if they want to make it a bit more competitive. Because you've got to bear in mind, they've got to think about what world versus what is going to look like when world restructuring is out, and maybe they even add some kind of competitive architecture that involves winning. Like, the moment winning matters, people will do the most degenerate strategies to win, and I'm not sure if ArenaNet want a universe where, like, running around, like, com-focusing people is kind of like the meta of world versus world, right? So they're kind of, yeah, they're keeping that. Yeah, there is a bit of a side effect that it basically deletes it from the roaming meta as well. Like, this is just a dead skill, pretty much. I'm not gonna lie, in world versus world. They wanted to keep it around in PvP, so the duration only goes down in world versus world. But yeah, in world versus world, this is pretty dead, to be honest. Like, they really walloped it. They really did, to be honest. But yeah. That's the situation with that one. And a couple of other, just, you know, like nifty little buffs, more vulnerability on illusion of vulnerability. This is like the domination trait line, right? I believe some free vuln there and PvE only, just making that a little bit better. More vulnerability application on your own. Not that Mesmer really needs help with that, but yeah, okay. And mental gymnastics. This one's actually kind of cool, by the way. This is the dueling trait that says, what is it? When you do a critical strike or something, you gain vigor. I think. Let me just quickly check. I think that's what it does. But I need to. I don't want to spread misinformation, okay? No, it's when you evade. When you evade, you gain vigor. So this means you can actually get 100% vigor uptime in PvE. Baseline, it's 5 seconds of vigor for a 5-second internal cooldown, just by evading attacks. Pretty cool, actually. I think it's always satisfying when you get 100% uptime from a trait, and, well, there you go. Now you have it. And across the board, a couple more cooldown reductions on some of these utility skills that are kind of pretty bad in PvE. Don't see a lot of play. I think in particular, this one's pretty cool, actually. Blade Renewal, 35-second cooldown in PvE for an immunity, essentially. Although, you might be more inclined to go for the stun break. I feel like having a short cooldown stun break is actually really nice, really underrated in PvE, actually, especially when you're in the open world. And again, I think a lot of these cooldown reductions to defensive abilities are very aimed at players who are in the open world, adventuring around, doing meta events, like, you know, progressing their character and just kind of playing through the game. I think that's kind of what's going on here. As well. And then we also have a couple of buffs to Power Virtuoso. Deadly Blades. The duration of the damage bonus, this is power and condition damage, goes up from 5 to 7 seconds. You might be thinking, wait, are they really buffing Condivert? Honestly, not really. It makes it a bit easier to play, but because Condivert has so much insane blade generation, at the end of the day, you basically had this buff up 100% of the time anyway if you were playing correctly, so this doesn't really affect Condivert under good play. Again, makes it a bit easier, but whatever, who cares? Mostly a buff for Power Virtuoso, because now you're going to have more uptime on this, so you get that damage modifier more frequently. And of course, Infinite Forge now says, this trait now causes blade attacks to deal more damage. And bear in mind, that's not just stuff like Shatters, that's a whole bunch of different spells, right? Like, that have the blade tag on them when you're playing Virtuoso. So this is probably going to end up being a pretty sizable, DPS increase, I imagine. Depends what the number is, obviously. We don't know the number, but yeah, Power Vert should be a thing. Which is, I'm not gonna lie, quite funny to me. I am amused by this a little bit because we could be getting into the universe where the two really strong ranged DPS builds are both on Mesmer, or two of the really strong ranged DPS builds are both on Mesmer. Of course, Condi Virtuoso, maybe not the most popular build in the Guild Wars 2 community. The fact that Power Virtuoso could also end up being really, really strong would be quite amusing. Now, it is worth noting, actually, that Power Vert, I think, is a little bit less oppressive than Condivert, because Condivert also has the insane tankiness with the lifesteal. I guess you could maybe get that with the Zakharos relic from the recent patch on Power Virtuoso, but Power Virtuoso also doesn't have that kind of same ease of cleave and ease of AoE pressure that something like Condition Virtuoso has. It's not a single target build. You can still AoE, obviously, but it doesn't, because of the lack of dagger on the build, it's a little bit different, because you have the Greatsword and then you have Dagger Sword. You're like Dagger Sword and Greatsword on this. So it's not quite the same, I think, in terms of what Condi Virtuoso does compared to Power Virtuoso. Because, of course, on Condivert, you're always on Dagger, you're always cranking AoE the entire time, whereas Power Virtuoso does have this, not exactly single target, but kind of single target element to it. You have that burst combo you need to set up as well, so I think it's not going to be quite the same. Doesn't have quite the same intensity of utility that Condition Virtuoso does, I think. But I will say it's nice to see ArenaNet try to make power builds ranged, but maybe they should work on that on some other classes that aren't just Mesmer and Necro, you know? Because it's funny, right? Like, they added ranged DPS to Harbinger. Power Harbinger is now a very solid ranged DPS option, and now Power Virtuoso. Well, we already had Scourge and Condivert, right? So, yeah, okay. But I'm not going to grumble too much. At the end of the day, I think it's good to actually add more DPS range builds, because that is something that is fairly lacking in the metagame, to be honest, overall, when it comes to this stuff. So, yep, again, not super crazy changes here for Mesmer overall. A couple of little tweaks, Power Vert going up a little bit, Com Focus trying to be nerfed in World versus World, and yeah, some just nice cooldown reductions for open world PvE, pretty much. All right. I hope you guys like some cooldown reductions, because here we go directly onto Necromancer. Sword didn't land where we wanted in World vs. World, so this update includes some improvements to its damage to make it a more viable option. We've also improved some defensive tools for Harbinger to give them some better survivability options, and tuned up a number of defensive skills in PvE. So, the other thing here, actually, is trying to bring Scepter back a little bit in PvP. In PvP, Pistol pretty much took over with weapon specialization, or weapon mastery, rather, because Pistol is a super nice weapon for damage output, and of course that stun is super juicy, especially when you can combo it with Torch. In the offset as well. And of course, Scepter got nerfed pretty hard over a couple of patches, right, in PvP, with the Boon Corruption going down from 3 all the way down to 1. That's going back up to 2 in PvP, which definitely makes it a much more compelling option. A double Boon Corrupt on a short cooldown is pretty damn nice when it comes to kind of busting through targets overall, and of course Scepter's damage output is still going to be respectable. I think this makes it a much more compelling option in the PvP context, I think. It does have that tough competition with Pistol, but honestly, I do think this has some potential, actually. Cooldown does go up to compensate for that, so you have to kind of delay. You're going to have a harder time kind of cycling between your weapon skills on cooldown, right? Like, you know, your weapon swap is 10 seconds, and one thing that was really nice about Scepter was that your weapon swap syncs up really nice, right? You can kind of cast it when you swap into the set, and then cast it when you swap out of the set as well. You get 2 really efficient usages there, which is pretty nice on the Scepter. But anyway, on to the sword stuff. So, more damage output on sword. The big one is going to be this, Path of Gluttony. This skill now corrupts a boon on targets at strike. This is the leap attack, or one of the leaps, rather, on the sword main hand. This is to kind of make it a bit more comparable to Axe, essentially, because Axe is the kind of the default for a lot of the things you run on Necromancer, because it just has AoE Boon Corrupt, which is kind of the name of the game in World vs. World. So this kind of makes it a little bit more comparable a little bit more comparable to this. It still functions differently, right? Like the Axe is an AoE boon corrupt, and there is that differentiation. Axe has single target burst with Axe 2, and Sword is going to be a mobility focused weapon essentially that will allow you to kind of leap around the battlefield a little bit. It's still going to be a bit limited, I feel like, because it has projectiles. You know, it's a bit of a weird one if you think about it, right? In this regard, because you still have projectiles, which doesn't work super hot in World versus World. You can maybe go unblockable with Reaper, though, of course, and those projectiles will actually be able to land effectively by using the, what is it called? Is it your, wait. Oh, no. What is it called? The Reaper skill. Oh, I've actually got old. It's over. Oh, is it nothing can save you? Nothing can save you, right? Yeah, it's actually over. What's happened to me? I'm senile. Bloody disaster. Either way, now you've got boon corruption on both halves of the skill. Because Path of Gluttony is corrupting a boon on target. And then Gorge is the second, the flip over skill there, right? So you still have the double corrupt there on this weapon as well. So Sword being brought up a little bit here in World versus World. In this regard. We're kind of redistributing the boon corruption from the second skill to the first skill as well. Gorman dies. Power coefficient goes up from 0.6. This is the offhand sword, of course. I believe. This sword 4? Actually, dude, I don't know. I need to know the weapon skills. I don't know. I know where they are, but I don't know like what slot they're in. I haven't messed around with these new weapons nearly as much as I perhaps should have. I'm out of the loop, guys. Out of the loop. But yeah, you can Gormandize people in World versus World now as well, with a bit more damage. Pretty good stuff for the offhand. Of course, Focus is still going to be a pretty good choice, right? Like that Spinal Shiver is always a popular target, I think. To land that on someone is always going to be fun. But anyway, a couple of other changes here in PvE as well. Just cooldowns going down on a lot of these abilities. Spectral Ring getting the treatment that we saw on the Guardian stuff and, well, all the other abilities that work this way. You're going to get an initial strike of CC when deployed in PvE. This actually could be interesting. Like, Necromancer utility skills, especially on Heal Scourge, are pretty flexible. This could mean that you just take double CC now. You don't really need Signet of Undeath that much on Heal Scourge, and except in, like, very extreme scenarios when it's a complete feeding frenzy. So you could actually just take Spectral Grasp and Spectral Ring for just a double CC for even more Defiance bar. It already has great CC, so if you want to take even more, you could go ahead and do that as well, which definitely could be good. And a couple of buffs here. Spectral Armor, 20-second quarter on this. Again, this is actually kind of a nice skill to have. What's fun about this, not many people know this, but if you use Spectral Armor and then you go in Shroud, you still keep gaining Shroud when you get hit. So this could actually be a really cool ability to use on Reaper, for example, because you can pop this, go into Shroud, get your stability up, your your Shroud 3. You're taking basically 0 damage, and attacks that are hitting you are refilling your Shroud while you're in Shroud. So this could honestly be a really cool skill to have in open world PvE, I think. It's quite powerful. It's historically been very powerful in PvP for that reason, right? Like giving you that sustain, giving you that life force back is actually super nice. In that regard. And consume conditions. Scourge heal, I mean, Necro heal skills are pretty damn good in PvE, and like having a condition management heal skill is not usually necessary in PvE, especially seeing as like if you're playing Scourge, you've got good Condi cleanse. You can pick a staff on Reaper, for example, and you can transfer Condis away. So I don't think you're going to see consume conditions very often in PvE, but can be a nifty utility pick. But stuff like Well of Blood and obviously Sand Flare and the Reaper heal skill, they're all really strong actually. So it's going to, whatever. Well, the power cooldown reduction, I mean, I don't know, maybe one day you'll use that, but it's pretty overkill. Not really worth the utility slot currently with this one. And then some Harbinger changes. Elixir of Ignorance. This is the stun break one. It gets protection in addition to its previous effects, which was resistance, by the way, with the stun break. Reduce the cooldown from 24 to 20 seconds in PvE only. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're really going to bother using that one that much, to be honest. And then Elixir of Bliss, reduces the cooldown from 20 to 25 seconds again. This is just like the Condi cleanse one, isn't it? Yeah, it's the Condi cleanse one. I mean, you know, I guess that's nice. And this one is the fun one. I hope you guys like Celestial Harbingers. Enjoy this. This strength now grants damage reduction for a short duration when entering Harbinger Shroud. I think they actually might make this quite weak in World versus World specifically, because for like Selly Harbinger, the death magic build, it's already a little bit of a menace, if we're being honest here, right? Is that, you know what I mean? It's not everyone's favorite build to play against, if you ask me. And yeah, that's something, because now you're going to, I don't know, maybe get 10% damage reduction, or 20%, or 33%. In PvP, in PvE, they might make it pretty crazy. They might make it quite significant. And honestly, making it higher in PvP could be good. Like, Harbinger is, it's a build that just doesn't live, right? Like, Necromancer in PvP is, like, very heavily reliant on using that Shroud mechanic to survive. So giving it a bit of tankiness with this actually might help it out a fair bit, and make it something that's a little bit more competitive. Because right now, you just get blown up. In PvP, you are going to get nuked if you try and play Harbinger. There's just too much damage, too much mobility as well. Like, you're too slow to really survive with the way Harbinger is. But yeah, and yeah, people coping about Heal Harbinger. No, okay, that is a meme build. The only point of Heal Harbinger is to transfuse people with the leap, and it looks kind of funny, but that's its only purpose. That's it for Necro. Again, a couple of little mini changes, nothing too crazy over there. Ranger. The Ranger changes for this update are focused on tuning up some underutilized skills with improvements to Shortbow, Longbow, and the juvenile Aether Hunter pet. We've also granted the Ranger more control over the trigger condition for Lead the Wind, reduced the cooldowns of a number of defensive utility skills, and updated the Unleash visual effect so it will fade out over time with the pet and the player. And look, there's the real important change. You're not going to be green forever now. Enjoy that. And yeah, I mean, you guys know the drill at this point. We're seeing a whole bunch of cooldown reduction across the board. I can point out a couple of notable ones. Signet of Stone. This is actually a really strong skill, by the way. This is really good. 30-second Endure Pain style effect, basically. That it basically says you take no damage from normal attacks, right, from strike attacks, basically, on a 30-second cooldown. Really powerful, makes hand kiting a whole lot easier. Actually, super good on Ceres challenge mode as well, actually, on any kind of ranger build. Fun fact, by the way, the group on NA to clear this first actually utilized Signet of Stone and Soul Beast immunity skills, like the Endure Pain style abilities, to come up with a completely different strategy to the conventional strategy to clear Ceres CM for the first time. And hey, look, maybe this is getting buffed in honor of that. It was a really cool strategy to watch, some really interesting theory craft. And yeah, it was really funny. I like that kill in particular, because when Ceres CM came out, everyone was like crying boo-boo-hoo about Virtuoso and range Condi builds being so dominant in strikes. And this was actually a full melee strategy, actually. It was only melee Soul Beasts. It was abusing the totally broken maces as well. But hey, look, you know, like, everyone else is using the totally broken Virtuoso, so it's fair game if you ask me. But yeah, I do think it is very, very funny, actually, because of course, Ranger, Ranger getting buffs, and man, I feel like every Ranger weapon is good right now. If you want to play Power Soul Beast, because again, like Power Soul Beast is where you're going to see these longbow buffs come in there with a couple of coefficient improvements on rapid fire and long range shot, the auto attack. Like, where are you going to see this? It's going to be on Power Soul Beast a lot of the time. Man, Power Soul Beast is already so good. You've got Hammer being good, Sword is good, Longbow is good, Maces are good, right? Hell, the only thing that isn't super good is actually Greatsword, like a really diverse build. I actually look at Ranger and look, I think some people, might go, oh, look, all these builds, like the rich get richer, like Vert's getting better, Ranger's getting better right now. I actually think, don't look at stuff like Ranger with jealousy. Look at it kind of with excitement in a way, because I think Ranger, in a lot of ways, the current state of Ranger, particularly Soul Beast, is kind of the end state for what ArenaNet want the game to look like. And let me explain that. Like, you almost can't make a bad Power Soul Beast build at this point. Seriously. You almost can't do it. Like, I guess you could pick Shortbow. That probably wouldn't be that good. But, yeah. I don't think Dagger would be that good either. But you almost can't make a bad build for this for this setup. And I think that's actually kind of cool. It means if you want to play hammer, you can 100% play hammer. You want to play longbow, you can 100% do that. You want to play sword? Yep, sure thing. You want to play axe? Excellent, do it, right? I think that's actually kind of cool. And I think that, and of course, you might think, well, that homogenizes stuff. Well, not really, though, because of course, each of those things are different. Like axe is a little bit ranged, longbow, of course, being longer range, hammer being melee with some CC, some kind of brawlery components. If greatsword got good, that would be another different thing. It's got a block on it, it's got mobility on it. It's, you know, a different damage. These have different damage profiles as well, of course, right? Although Soul Beast does lean towards the bursty, but you know what I mean. You know, we're kind of rambling here a little bit. I think it's kind of interesting that this could be the end stage for what a class is going to end up looking like. But yeah, Ranger gets there first because we all know it. Trig's a Ranger, man. He loves this stuff. Okay, you know, he loves it. He's all about it. So enjoy that one, I guess. And yeah, some improvements to short bow as well. Going to be kind of Condi Soul Beast stuff getting juiced up here a little bit. Crippling shot, the bleeding inflicted by your pet. Basically, when you land this ability, your pet's next 3 attacks inflict bleeding. That's going to use your condition damage rather than your pet's condition damage. That's going to be kind of an untamed thing, more than Soul Beast, really, actually, because, of course, if you're an untamed, then, you know, you are your pet, of course. And concussive shot, cooldown is going down there as well, just, you know, better CC on this build as well. And, yeah, cooldown reduction as well in World vs. World and PvP. You know, like, you know, they're bringing Condi Druid back, I guess. Have fun with that, guys. Enjoy it. Did get nerfed very harsh, to be fair, so whatever. And that's fine. And a couple of changes here as well. Just, again, more cooldown reduction across the board. I think this one in particular for open world could be really fun. Quickening Zephyr, 20-second cooldown. So quickness and super speed on a very short cooldown now, actually, in PvE. So some actually pretty damn strong mobility if you think about it, actually. And strength of the pack. This ability actually really fell out of favor because, well, kind of because of Untamed, honestly. Untamed is a really powerful, kind of similar elite skill in a way. They have some similarity with the way they work, actually. And that one is like a really, really powerful option. And of course, the Untamed elite skill as well for Incredible Burst. Strength of the back definitely fell off. This ability got nerfed, I think, as well. And that's kind of what fell us off. It's being brought back. It's being brought back into the mix here. Might be a little bit more of a consideration in PvP and World vs. World. And this one is cool, actually, for PvE. So, Spirit of Nature was a little bit obsoleted by the Glyph of the Stars rework, because it was kind of a very similar thing. It was like a revive elite skill, and Glyph is just better, to be frank, a lot of the time, almost all the time, with the way it works. It has the downstate prevention, it has the boon application as well. It's like a channel thing you can put down that pulses and keeps reviving people. It's honestly a godlike skill, really is. But Spirit of Nature is still there, and this ability sees play on Untamed, because, to be frank, in PvE, the other skills aren't really damage increases, so you just take some really nifty utility. And now this is actually better, so this is actually kind of a nice buff to builds like Quickness Untamed, which I think is actually really cool. I like it when elite skills aren't just for damage and they're for actual utility, so I kind of like this. I think this is really fun. Seeing this have its cooldown reduced. Really fun. I like that. Kind of a skill that lost its identity, and I like that it is going to still continuously play in a slightly stronger form as well. I think giving one way to balance support builds is to absolutely do stuff like this. I think it's really cool to give stuff like, oh yeah, well, Quickness Untamed maybe doesn't boon quite as well. It doesn't have stability, for example, compared to Herald, but maybe you don't need that. Maybe you can say, well, someone else can do the stability, and you've got a really cool revival elite skill that comes packaged in with your build. That's a pretty interesting way to balance things, I think. So that's not bad. Nice little change there. Lead the Wind. No longer grants boons when striking a target at giga long range over 1200, which, let's be honest, when does that? Doesn't happen super often, does it? And now grants boons when using point blank shot. The very obvious gameplay here, actually, very obvious gameplay on Lead the Wind is going to be point blank shot directly into rapid fire. I think that's going to feel really good, actually, if you can land that combo. It does require marksmanship, though, and this is kind of a PvP-oriented change, to be honest. Like, the other traits are going to be more DPS in the PvE context. But, yeah, this is going to be very... And honestly, the duration could be kind of cool, actually, how much uptime you could actually get on this in PvE. You might get decent quickness uptime, actually, which that's another thing. But anyway... the thing is about in PvP, I think taking marks is a little tricky right now on a lot of Ranger builds. In that context, they're kind of a little bit more aimed towards the brawler style. Like, you know, we did see some nerfs to maces, which is very targeted at Untamed in PvP right now, because maces are... They were good. Let's put it like that. But yeah, I'm not sure if marksmanship is coming back just yet with just this change on its own, to be honest, because especially in, I guess, what you would call, I guess, high-level competitive, because Longbow Ranger is very good against players who aren't familiar with the timings and how to dodge that combo. It tends to lose a lot of its value, actually, when you're interacting with players who are going to kind of see this one coming, if that makes any sense. It's like you have your combo, and then you're like, oh, well, if you're still alive, I guess I'm in trouble, you know? But anyway, and the Juvenile Aether Hunter skills have been adjusted as follows. Lunge, bigger hitbox, and reduce the cripple duration from 8 to 3 seconds. Dimension Breach, aftercast reduced by 1 second. Okay. Leyline Vortex, increase the power coverage from 0.3 to 0.5 in PvE only. Leyline Vortex Soul Beast, this is the Soul Beast abilities now. Increase the number of hits from 4 to 8. Reduce the Torment Stacks per hit from 2 to 1. Reduce the power coefficient from 0.6 to 0.35. Basically, they just halved it and doubled the amount of hits. So this is kind of like a feel change rather than a numerical change, more than anything else. I'm not gonna lie, I'm not sure if anything's really using this pet, but I mean, Trig loves changing pets, so there you have it, I guess. Very, very good. All right, next up, some Soul Beast changes here. Power cut, look, they forgot to nerf it. Look, it does CC, it has to do 0.01. Boom! World vs. One in PvP on your Prelude Lash. That's the pull and immobilize that you get on a variety of pets when you're a Soul Beast. And the Tail Swipe, fix an issue that prevented this from being affected by quickness. Huh, that's a really weird one. How about that? And then Dolyak Stance, mutate conditions, cooldowns going down in PvE. You know, this skill is kind of a beast skill. Look at Dolyak Stance. Look how stacked this is. This is such a great skill. Like, and bear in mind, you can stance share this as well. So, like, how long is it going to be until this skill is actually just busted? Honestly, it might just be now. Because bear in mind, this gives 6 accessibility. It makes you immune to movement impairing conditions. Negative 33% damage taken that stacks with protection. And it's a stun break. This has got to be one of the best skills in the entire game, to be honest, at this point. So yeah, again, similar to what we saw before, going to be really sick in open world. Great ability in open world for any kind of Soul Beast build that kind of out there in the jungle. You're doing meta events, like there's a bunch of CC going out. You slap that on, you're immune to damage. You can share it with your friends as well. Crank some DPS. And then away you go. Boom. Fix an issue that caused the skill to impose a 1-second global cooldown. What a random bug on Wing Buffet, by the way. What is that? Okay, I mean, I'm not sure I have much contra. That's a very amusing bug. And then Toxic Shot. This is the ambush on the Untamed Shortbow, I believe. Velocity goes up by 33%. The skill now weakens regardless of whether the target is poisoned. Increase the poison and torment durations from 5 to 6 seconds. So again, I think the overarching theme of this is that they want Shortbow on Conditioned Untamed just to have a little bit more punch, pretty much. It's going to be the goal, though. And then Mutate Conditions, 20 seconds in PvE only. Again, really powerful effect. Bear in mind, this says you cleanse all of your condies. You do get vulnerability, but, you know, whatever. 20-second cooldown, and it's a stun break. I mean, yeah, certainly a perfectly viable option if you wanted to go for this as kind of a defensive utility skill in open world PvE. That's for sure. Okay. We've got through Ranger. Now it's time for Revenant. You know, I got really baited here. They, you know, on the stream it said Herald changes for PvP. And I was like, oh my god. Herald is such a fun class in PvP. It would be super cool to come back. But the changes, they are fairly cautious, I want to say. They are not super high impact. I'm not sure if we're really going to see any meta shifts as a result of these. But let's go ahead and go through them anyway. So they're looking at the Retribution tree and the Invocation tree here a little bit. So Roiling Mists. You have your bonus critical strike chance with Fury is 10 to 20% in PP only. That's obviously a big deal. Landing critical strikes as a power build is going to be really, really good, kind of across the board. Of course, this is an invocation trait, so this can perfectly apply to other Revenant builds, but yeah, the goal was specifically Power Herald and Power Renegade a little bit as well, actually. Of course, with this one, Charged Mists energy gain when you are below the threshold is up from 10 to 15 in PvP only. And in the Retribution tree, the Might duration is 8 to 10 seconds in PvE and 6 to 10 seconds in World versus World and PvP. So basically, while you have Resolution, you have more damage output, and you're also going to be getting a stack of Might every second. And that's going to be 10 stacks now from that. I mean, I don't know about this one, to be honest. Again, these are very cautious changes, to be honest. There's a little bit more damage here. Like, you get 1.5% bonus damage per boon on you in PvP with Reinforced Potency, which is the minor trait in Herald. And Shining Aspect, a very minor healing increase. Whenever you consume, you get an extra 100 healing compared to what it was before, basically. I mean, I don't know. It's... Yeah, I mean, I like that Herald's on the radar. I think everyone preferred the game when Herald was good. It's a really fun class to play, I think. One of the most fun classes in PvP, right? Everyone ends up playing Herald at some point. Yeah, don't think this is going to cut it. Like, Herald right now is... I mean, I guess Condi Herald is okay. But I think people want to see the Power Herald build come back, and that's why they're looking at, you know, that's kind of why they're looking at Retribution, I think, a little bit, and the crit damage, you know, critical strike chance with Roiling Mists. But I'm not sure if Power Herald is coming back anytime soon, to be honest. But yeah, they did actually mention on the stream they're a little bit worried about Bunker Herald, which is why they were a little cautious on some stuff. Here across the board, because of course, well, I mean, Bunker Vindicator was very much a thing in the last monthly, and definitely saw some play there, which is not exactly what you really want to see, is it? But yeah. And then some changes to Renegade as well. And this is for PvE too, actually. So if you're a Power Renegade enjoyer, maybe get a little bit excited. A little bit of excitement for all of you here as well. But Heroic Command, this is the Might ability. Energy cost down to 5. Citadel Bombardment has been made much more consistent. So the missiles spread, basically, you know when you open the portal, the missiles kind of, they all fire out, kind of miss every single thing you're trying to hit. Well, they halved the radius on that. So now it's going to be pretty consistent. If a target stays where you're dropping your bombs, it's going to hit people a lot. And that's why they actually nerfed the damage a lot, because it's going to be pretty consistent. And with the energy costs going down, that is good. Energy costs in PvP are pretty aggressive. To be honest, it's one of the things that is very limiting for Revenant in general, almost prohibitive, is how expensive a lot of abilities are with energy. So looking at energy costs, I think, is a pretty smart way of doing this overall. You know, the energy costs, I remember when stuff like... Do you guys remember back in the day when Riposting Shadows only cost 20 energy? I think now it costs 40. Yeah, nice. But that's, the good old days. The good old days of double Power Herald teleporting halfway across the map in 2 seconds and one-shotting you with Sword 5. Those were the days. Yeah. But anyway, Ice Razor's Ire cost is also going down in terms of the cost, and Soul Cleave Summit, the base healing when summoning of the Warband member. So basically, it's like the combo effect, right? Like, you put this thing down, and you can combo it with other ones, and then you get some AoE healing, right? With that one as well. The big one for PvE is actually going to be all for one. So the protection uptime is up in PvP, but here's the bonus. This trait now grants increased damage to the Revenant when a legendary Renegade skill is used. This trait will only trigger while in combat. So in other words, we don't know what the numbers are on this, but I imagine they'll probably tune it pretty aggressively in PvE. But exciting news for Power Renegade, potentially. Alacrity Renegade, probably Alacrity, probably not DPS just yet in terms of a DPS build, but yeah, actually pretty cool there, if you ask me. So you can put down, you do the intended gameplay, and you combo out your Warband members, and you get a DPS modifier for doing that, because of course the skills are going to be doing damage, and you're going to be doing damage as well. Love to see that. Brutal Momentum, a bit more critical strike chance. Again, that's going to kind of combo with Roiling Mist, potentially. You have another 20% crit from Roiling Mist, another 15% from Brutal Momentum, for a total of 35%, of course, at the base there. So, a bit more damage there for Power Renegade builds in PvP. Not sure if that's coming back anytime soon either, to be honest. And maybe that's a good thing. You know, I'm not sure if I really want Renegade to be good in PvP. That doesn't really sound like fun. But yeah, let's maybe, whatever. And Vindication. This trait no longer grants might when gaining Callous Fervor, and instead causes the user to heal for a percentage of their outgoing damage for each stack of Callous Fervor. I think this could be an actual really sick sustain trait, to be honest. Because, of course, anything that says you convert damage into healing is pretty insane. Realistically, that's going to be crazy. It did give you a lot of might, which was actually kind of nice for kind of self-sustain builds in PvE, but now it's going to give you, there's plenty of other ways you can get might, right? Like, might is relatively easy to come by, but lifesteal, that is relatively uncommon. This could turn you into an absolute sustained beast. Again, depends on the numbers. If it's like 1% per stack, then well, I guess it's not that exciting. But honestly, given how insane Sustain is in PvE right now, stuff like Untamed getting ridiculous lifesteal from its Grandmaster trait, I mean, honestly, this might actually end up being pretty generous and maybe even pretty exciting. This could be a really fun trait to mess around with if you're in some kind of self-sustained scenario. This could end up being really powerful, I think. And, you know, Renegade is a kind of a bit of a favorite for kind of open world content. It's really, really good at dealing very good sustained damage and self-buffing itself, so there's some potential there, I think, with that build. But yeah, in PvP, I don't think I'm seeing it. I'm not sure I'm seeing Renegade coming back anytime soon, to be honest. It's the meta right now is a pretty high bar to make it into the meta in PvP right now. Power level's pretty high, I feel like. All right. And Thief, honestly, look, I don't want to meme my Thief enjoyers here, but even ArenaNet said that they're not expecting Sword to actually be good after these changes, to be honest. They're just trying to make the bad option less good. And Thief was early on in the notes, and that's kind of why I got the impression that a lot of these changes are trying to make bad options less bad, pretty much. That's exactly what they're doing with Sword here. Like, Sword just doing more damage pretty much across the board. All of the skills and, you know, all the combo skills. Unload DPS increase. Look, how long is it until we get 40k DPS unload spamming? I don't know. It's going to be on its way, guys. Let's go. Let's go. Pew pew spam is here, my friends. Unload. Yeah, let's go. Nice quality of life, though, actually, with Venoms. So, previously with Venoms, if you had two Thieves in the same subgroup, super awkward. You kind of overwrite and troll each other's Venoms, potentially. That's fixed now. Now it goes up, it stacks all the way up to 25, right? So, you know, you don't troll each other now. Boom. There you go. Enjoy that. There's a little bit of a safeguard here that you can't double stack people with Venoms if you're able to reset the cooldown on your Venom. So, yeah, bit of a safeguard there, but whatever, doesn't matter in that regard. And then some nice improvements here across the board, just reducing the cooldowns on some of these Thief skills in PvE, bit more sustain, of course, improving stun breaks, right, like making it more compelling to kind of slot one of these into your build for a bit more defensive utility. Nice Shadow Refuge there as well, like big cooldown reduction there for some stealth fun times. Kind of nice for, you know, stuff like dungeons, right? And, you know, like fractal skips and stuff like that with the stealth. You can use your Shadow Refuge significantly more often, which is actually kind of cool. And then the other big one here is actually going to be Shadow Portal. This one's nice. I think people are going to come up with some clever stuff with this. You can now portal 10 people with Shadow Portal now, as opposed to just 5. It was a very awkward, right? Your squad size is 10 in Guild Wars 2 PvE, right? So not being able to portal your entire group when Scourge and Mesmer can both do that was kind of weird. This is now 10. I actually think this change is going to be really fun. I'm really excited to see what people come up with. I guarantee you there are going to be some really interesting bits of Thief tech that you can do in raids, strikes, and fractals with this. Should be fun to see what people come up with. Well, not fractals, because, you know, you can only have 5 people there. But, you know, raids and strikes at least. Should be fun. And a couple of, you know, improvements to some of other abilities here as well. Pumping up. This is actually the acrobatics trait, where you get might when you dodge. Actually, evade an attack. This could turn acrobatics into a pretty fun self-buffing trait line, actually, where you just evade all over the place and just stack up a bunch of might on yourself. And Escapist Fortitude. This is a nice, just general buff, I guess, like a little bit of extra sustain on Daredevil. This actually will apply to all Daredevil builds because it's a minor trait. So you get 684 healing whenever you get a dodge, compared to 456. So a little bit of extra sustain. You know, can't complain about that, can we, really? You know, yeah, we definitely can't. And yeah, they just made it so the exhaustion just doesn't do anything in PvE. So you can just basically run around free in PvE. You still have the exhaustion, so you don't get endurance regeneration in competitive. Quite right. So, but in PvE, of course, that's kind of irrelevant. So they just kind of did that little quality of life thing there almost in that regard. Oh, man. Well of Silence. I can't believe they did this to Well of Silence, man. Oh, you hate to see it. Like, I miss the old version of this skill. But you know what? At least the cooldown's lower. And look, Shadow Sap, guys. They increase the splash effectiveness of boons, so you give better AoE prot and AoE might now. It's up to 75% in PvE only. Eventually, ArenaNet will give up and say, you know what, we should just make the boon splash 100%. But I guess you have to wait till the next patch for that one. Enjoy it. Yeah, that's it for Thief. You can also kneel for only 1 initiative in PvE. Exciting. Very cool. You know, ooh, ooh. And it's kind of nice. It means you can kind of go up and down, right? You can kneel and unkneel without getting punished on the initiative there. But I mean, yeah, whatever. Thief! Pretty minor stuff here for Thief. Mostly quality of life, to be honest. And a really nice thing with the Shadow Portal, I guess. Alrighty then, and we've actually got a little bit of excitement all the way at the end here with our warrior. It is definitely going to be last but not least. So, check this out. Heal Berserker buffs. Yo! So, Inspiring Whirl. This now heals allies instead of granting them regen. Really nice. That is the staff auto attack, final part of the staff auto attack chain. In general, regen is pretty easy to get in PvE, so a lot of the time it's like your auto attack is a do nothing almost. Like you're like, oh, okay, wow, that's exciting. Finishing my auto does nothing. Now it's going to heal people, so more sustain. Here's the big stuff though. Here's the really juicy stuff. This is fun. The banner changes. Battle standard. That's the res elite skill. Boom, cooldown down to 90. Really cool in PvE. Means you can just res significantly more frequently. Really fun skill and really good for Heal Warrior. And of course, you can actually slot this into your DPS Warrior build too. You have to give up Headbutt, which don't really want to do, honestly, on Berserker, to be fair. But on Spellbreaker, you can definitely slide it in there at a relatively minor loss, unless you need that specific boon removal utility. With that, and Heal Berserker is going to also have fun with that as well, with being able to revive people. But here's the big stuff. Banner of Tactics. Finally, 1 stack of stability going up to 5, and the cast time is going down from 0.8 to 0.3 seconds. And the aftercast goes down as well. Wow. Nice. Same thing as Banner of Defense. Super cool for all support warriors. Cross-game mode, actually. Going to make it way easier to stun break allies in competitive modes. You can get your stability at the right time in PvE way better. It's 5 stacks instead of 1. I mean, wow. Actually, really good change. In my opinion, for both of these. Same thing with the Aegis, right? You can be way more reactive and snappy with your Aegis. I will complain about this. This is actually not the change I would have liked to see. I would have liked to see it even further, that you can precast your banner down and then you have a flip skill that applies the effect when you need it. Because my issue with these skills is that look how stacked they are. You put it down and you're going to get super speed, stability, and pulsing resistance, right? Like, what if you only want half of that and you want half of it later? I think this is definitely an issue with Warrior. A lot of its abilities are hyper compressed right now. They're very stacked, so it's hard to kind of use them in a granular way. I don't know, that's a grumble, and I don't think Heal Berserker is getting like mega OP, but these are some pretty nice changes. But let's be honest, the build definitely still needs a little bit of work overall to find its place against the giants of Chrono, Scourge, and Druid. Let's be honest there. But overall, I actually like these changes quite a lot. And then, of course, we have some general improvements. I'm sure we're all used to this by now. Endure Pain. That's kind of a cool one, right? 30-second Endure Pain. Cooldown. Actually pretty good, to be honest. Stun Break and Damage Immunity. Again, going to be fantastic for some of those open world situations. Same thing with Balance Stance, honestly. Some nice stability application just across the board. And a nice Stun Break there with a 25-second cooldown. Dolyak Signet. You know, whatever. You know, kind of a fairly similar to these and how you might go about using it. 25-second cooldown now again. Boom. There it is. Easy peasy. Frenzy. It's actually looking at a fish attack for Frenzy here on my little API right there. But of course, it is the ability that we know and love that is going to give you some quickness when you use it. In that regard, yeah. Nice for Handkite Warrior as well on Endure Pain. That's kind of a fun one too. Stomp, cooldown. I mean, honestly, Stomp's kind of a fun ability to use, so cooldown goes down. Blah, 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 blah. Same thing with Signet of Stamina. Yeah. Okay. But now we do have some other changes to talk about to the Tactics trait line. So, Martial Cadence. Soldier's Focus grants boons to affected allies. We already know this one. You're going to get stability in PvE. But now you also recharge Soldier's Focus, which, bear in mind, what does that do? That's the kind of the concept of Tactics. It's like a AoE heal. It's going to give might. It's going to give us stability when we weapon swap. This is exciting because it means you can get it on demand, right? This is really exciting. You can get that on demand. So when you need that stability stack, boom, you can access it. When you need that healing, boom, you can access it. That's really cool. Very similar to how the Let Loose trait works in Untamed with the weapon swap activating it. This actually, I think, is a really nice playability improvement for Heal Warrior. I think it is also kind of annoying that it kind of competes with Shout Heal. Obviously, it's in the same area as Shout Heal, but in a way, it kind of has a similar function because it's already kind of going to be providing you extra healing with the Soldier's Focus anyway. So that's also a really nice change. And here's another pretty cool change, actually. And again, this is going to be aimed at Heal Warrior. It's Heightened Focus is what this is. This is a Grandmaster in the Discipline tree, right? A Grandmaster in the Discipline tree. And this one says, now, when you get increased outgoing healing when you strike an enemy with a burst skill based on the adrenaline spent. And, of course, this will be competing with Burst Mastery, and this potentially might make you run into some adrenaline issues on builds like Heal Warrior, which might be a little bit awkward to kind of keep up that adrenaline generation, because you won't be getting the refund anymore with Burst Mastery. But more outgoing healing is going to be good. It might be like 10% per adrenaline, let's say. So 30% if you get a full adrenaline off. That pretty scary number, but in PvE, honestly, they can get away with that because the build is not super strong anyway. That's going to be pretty cool, I think. And that will be fun gameplay too, right? Because that means you land a big burst, then you unleash your healing right after that. I think that's kind of a pretty cool gameplay style, actually, for a build like this. So I'm liking the design on that, and a nice change, right? Like, one thing that Warrior is struggling with as a healer is that you kind of need to have two good trait lines, right? Like, and Warrior has, well, I mean, now it kind of has to, right? Because Discipline, of course, gives you the extra healing as well. In Stalwart Focus, and of course now you're going to have access to this Heightened Focus trait that's going to give you the extra healing when you spend your adrenaline as well, which is pretty cool. And then Shrug It Off, also in the Tactics trait line, of course, is going to now activate on your heal skill rather than passively when you get a number of condies on you. This is honestly just a straight buff because it would just randomly proc in competitive, maybe when you don't really need it to. Now your heal skill is just going to give you an extra AoE condition. It will cleanse your allies as well. Yeah, that's just good, to be honest. That's just like a better thing. And it's 3 AoE Condi cleanse as well in PvE, which is pretty cool. So when you use your heal skill, you're going to be passively cleansing conditions from your allies as well. Restorative Strength, actually, this is kind of an interesting change. You get resistance when you use your heal skill in addition to might. Honestly, a much better skill. This is kind of a weird one. Oh yeah, you get 5 might. Like, wow, very exciting. Of course, you could combo that with Might Makes, right, which is a very common thing to do, but I think it's a much more exciting thing now that you get resistance when you use your heal skill as well, which is going to help you kind of evade any kind of snares with that kind of stuff. And it looks like they do want to help Warrior kind of come back into the mix in PvP as well. I think very likely, in particular, Spellbreaker. They want Strength to be more of a consideration instead of defense, right? If you want to go in that direction by improving the might stacks on Reckless Social, giving you that resistance on Restorative Strength, and the better sustain, of course, on Might Mix, right? This is like the classic Spellbreaker build, right? The classic Strength Spellbreaker build. I think a lot of people like, so, you know, they're trying to nudge that back into the game a little bit. And oh my goodness, look, they're trying to make one of the... some of the most garbage skills in the game playable. Holy shit, it's happening. Man, the Spellbreaker utilities have got to be some of the worst. I feel like Catalyst ones are also pretty bad, but at least the Earth Shield ones saw a little bit of play. These ones kind of suck. Like, outside of the very niche GVG kind of spotting meta with your Spellbreakers, and then even then you ideally want to swap out of that. That's the funny thing, right? You actually want to kind of skill swap that. You don't really want to be going with that stuff, but yeah. Some buffs here to Featherfoot Grace and Sight Beyond Sight. Resistance Super Speed goes down from 5 to 4, but the cooldown goes down to 25 seconds, and 20 seconds in PvE only. So again, yeah, in general, that's better, right? Like, is it gonna fit into builds? Honestly, I really have my doubts, but it might be a fun skill to use in PvE, so there is that. And this also removes 3 non-damaging conditions from the user. Some pretty good roleplay here, I think, actually, on Sight Beyond Sight. You know, it will remove blind from you, right? Like, well, it already does, but now it will remove everything from you. It will remove blind, and it's also going to remove stuff like, you know, cripple and chill, all that kind of stuff. From you too. So overall, some small changes to Warrior. I think if you're a Heal Berserker fan, I'd be particularly excited, actually. And of course, I didn't mention this. I think I did kind of mention it in passing, but this also does affect competitive as well. Like, Banner of Tactics, actually very common to see this pop up on Warrior builds, simply because of the power of this utility, the stability, the super speed, the resistance, and of course the ability to stun break allies as well. Don't forget that. Really great in competitive modes because of that. And now that you're going to be able to be way more reactive with it, way snappier, that's going to empower this ability much more when it comes to actually using that for your defensive utility, for your team. But yeah, that's going to just about do it. That is the entirety of the balance patch. That took a little while to go through, actually. There's a lot of changes. There's a decent amount to talk about. Not the biggest patch, to be honest. Not the most exciting patch. And I don't think it's going to change that much. I think I will actually be a little bit critical here, actually, of this patch, because none of the changes are bad. Let's actually get that out of the way first. Like, the changes are definitely not bad, but they are not super high impact, if we're being honest here. They are relatively minor. I think players were looking forward to a big shakeup. I do think that perhaps we should have seen this coming, though, because, again, the next update for Guild Wars 2 is the next expansion. And I think that's where a lot of the development time on skills and balance is going right now, making sure whatever it is it a new weapon, is it like a new utility skills, whatever is coming next expansion is being, I think, heavily developed right now. So I think we should have probably seen this one coming, but I will actually kind of, you know, hold the fire to ArenaNet a little bit. I think it would have been nice to actually address some, like, really key issues. There have been some pretty clear pain points with specs like Firebrand Mantra boon application is pretty painful. Heal Tempest is similar, like, underperforming with its boon application. Builds are very clearly overperforming, especially stuff like Virtuoso is, you know, it's pretty busto, to be honest. And there's certainly, like, plenty of underperforming DPS builds and support builds that could have used a little bit of love. It is nice to see some of them get some attention, like, in particular. I'm kind of a bit of a fan of Heal Berserker. I do like that this build is a thing, and I like that it's continuously getting attention. And, you know, it exists, you know, it's there. You know, like, hell, even ArenaNet acknowledging Heal Spectre exists with this change here. You guys get one line. Have fun with that. And I do think that overall, I do think it is a good idea to just make defensive utility skills better. I do like that as a concept. I will say, cooldown reductions, though, I'd like to see reworks. Like, in particular, there are certain classes... Oh, let me back up a little bit. Classes that have good core skills, good core utilities, it's almost impossible for them to be bad. It gives them such an advantage when it comes to balance. That's why Guardian has historically been so dominant, because its core toolkit with Stand Your Ground and Advance is just such a fantastic kit. Same thing as Mesmer with Portal, Blink, Stability Mantra now being added to the mix. Like, just these really awesome core toolkits. That is a big foundation for why these builds just continuously do well in all areas of the game, to be honest. Not just PvE, but just everywhere. And that's why I would love to see big reworks to Elementalist utility skills that just has a weak core. Like, ELE's core is a weak toolkit. It just is. Same thing with Tempest utility skills. They've fallen behind in terms of how powerful they are. What the hell are Catalyst utility skills? What the hell is even going on there, right? Like, I think these are the things that I would have loved to see targeted in a patch like this. I understand that you know, there's only so many hours in the day. They can't do all this stuff. But I think this patch, I will say it is a little bit underwhelming, if I'm being perfectly honest. Like, again, like I said, there's nothing bad here, in my opinion. Like, all of the changes, I think, improved the game overall, but definitely something that I think a lot of players are excited for. Players are really hyped for these changes. I think they love to see the game change. They love to see new builds and new ideas come into the game. And I feel like that patch is not really going to deliver on this that much. I hope I'm wrong, obviously, and we see some, like, crazy stuff that people come up with, you know, when the patch actually drops. But I don't think so, to be honest. It is going to be very similar before, and I don't think there's that like, oh shit, I've got to log in, I need to log in right now and play this. I don't think we're really going to have that experience with that patch. But yeah, I think that kind of sums up my thoughts on this patch overall. Hopefully you have enjoyed me talking about this. Man, I feel like I've been talking about this for ages. It is nearly midnight. I've been streaming for 9 hours. Like, we're on the grind. And that's why, if you're on YouTube right now, you should follow me on Twitch. You should watch the stream on YouTube. Many people watch the stream on YouTube. You could be one of them. That could be you, chat. Like, you could be the viewer that I want you to be, okay? By watching on Twitch and then subscribing on Twitch, then subscribing on YouTube, then following all my social media, then watching all my other videos, then leaving a comment, okay? Yeah. That's right. You could do all those things. Like, you make it happen. But anyway, hope you've all enjoyed it. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. Leave your thoughts below. Let's get some discussion going. Join my Discord and then yell about it there. And that's it for now. Thanks for watching, YouTube. Hope you enjoyed it. I'm going to see you next time. Buy the game using my referral link. Get ready to pre-order it. You know when I said no pre-orders? I lied. Alright, okay, I'm out of here before I start exposing myself even more. Boom!